So you've now got something that's a higher AOV, that has a stronger retention, and you're able to get better cash flow because you're getting more cash back into your business right now. So instead of waiting for a 3-month subscription to fire 3 times, you're getting all that cash up front.
Why is subscription so powerful in 2025?
So we're seeing, like, in a given month with some of our brands where 1 to 1.5% of their entire monthly subscriber base is upgrading to quarterly. So if you have really bad churn, there's something off about your product and the people that are buying. As soon as they fix that issue, their churn is going to improve probably by 50 or even 100%.
Every ecom founder feels it. Rising CAC, leaky retention, and a revenue line that's constantly on the slide.
So if I know that I have a certain number of subscribers and I have a predictable amount of churn, I can start to project or forecast revenue in the future.
Today's guest, Matthew Holman, calls it a disease, and his prescription is subscription.
They get disease-ridden and ratty and all this stuff, or maybe you don't realize it, right? So a subscription, you would think on paper makes sense, but it can be difficult to convince people they want that.
He's helping fast-growth ecom teams turn subscribe and save website widgets into a serious revenue machine using smarter offers, cleaner data, and simple comms that keep people engaged.
And then all those other data points that I mentioned are really helpful for understanding what people are liking, what's happening, and then trying to iterate from there.
So join us on today's episode as we explore when subscriptions make sense and when they don't.
Subscriptions shouldn't be something like you subscribe and then you're just hoping people stick around. You want to try to build in some type of experience where it makes sense for them to hear from you. That's kind of how you want to be thinking about it.
How he's using quarterly and premium tiers to lift AOV, cut churn, and boost cash flow.
I can try to bump AOV with upsells or getting somebody on a quarterly subscription. That's going to positively impact revenue.
The offer testing strategy that actually moves cohorts along, as well as the entire stack he and his business use to enable this process.
But testing that quarterly option on the product page, like, we're seeing that convert incredibly well across the board with our clients, where it's driving up average order value.
Plus, so much more on messaging, loyalty programs versus memberships, and the data you need to focus on to see real brand growth.
And a lot of brands aren't even paying attention to whether that loyalty program is actually incentivizing people to spend more and driving up LTV. But if we're going to start testing a membership and we're going to start giving things away, you have to have some kind of baseline or some kind of metric that you're following to make sure that what you're doing is actually having a positive impact.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying the videos, why not consider subscribing? We drop bi-weekly content that will help you improve your business right here on the channel. Matt, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. It is a pleasure to have you.
Thanks, Jordan, for having me. Glad to be here, man.
Cool. I want to just kick off by saying that I love your kind of name as a subscription doctor. I think the branding of subscription prescription is very cool. Can you just talk to what it is that you guys do over there?
Absolutely. I mean, I have to give all the credit for the name to my partner, David Bradley. A couple years ago, we were trying to think up a new name for our subscription newsletter, and kind of landed on that one. We saw a big opportunity in this space because most of the expertise or authority comes from subscription apps or subscription platforms. There's not really a lot of independent people kind of talking about it and thinking about it. And we just feel like everybody is trying to figure out how to do subscriptions better. They feel like there's a problem, something's not working. And so that kind of screams like diagnosis, like doctor trying to help you figure things out.
So you mentioned that you started off with kind of the newsletter. Why that kind of medium?
Well, the funny thing is we actually started it as my partner, we own a subscription app called Qpilot. It's primarily on WooCommerce, although we do have some Shopify stuff that we do, but it's fairly small compared to a lot of the other big players. And so the newsletter was a marketing play at first. As we were building our Shopify integration, we were hoping that, hey, we're going to get more awareness on Shopify and potentially win deals because of that. And what ended up happening was we got so much feedback from people saying like, no, I don't care about what platform you're on. Like I'm on X and I need to know how to use that better. Right. I'm using AppStore, I'm using Skio or Stay, Recharge, and all these others. How do I do better on that? And that's where we kind of had this light bulb moment that, like, there's this really huge gap of information on best practices and subscriptions. And we had all this knowledge from our own clients and the work that we had done with our own clients. And so it kind of just started from there, like, okay, let's just try to do a better job with this newsletter, and then we'll see what comes of that. And the newsletter became a podcast, now consulting, and we build other pieces of tech, stuff that integrates with like Recharge or Bolt subscriptions and other things like that too. So we're very, very much invested in this space, and subscription prescription really isn't about selling Qpilot anymore. It's actually just about helping people figure out subscriptions.
Okay. Can we take that back to the first principle? Why is subscription so powerful in 2025?
Yeah, I think it really just comes down to this idea of LTV and predictability, right? Like most people, when you're trying to raise money, when you're trying to borrow money, when you're trying to project what your business is going to be, you like to have some kind of element of predictability, right? So if I know that I have a certain number of subscribers and I have a predictable amount of churn, I can start to project or forecast revenue into the future. I think that's one of the reasons people like them. The other reason is it's actually just a better revenue grab in the long run anyway, because if you're talking about most products where you're using retention marketing or email marketing to get somebody to come back and do a repeat purchase, so, something like the 10, 20, maybe even the 30% return purchase rate can be pretty good for a brand and be effective. Subscriptions like that first month, even if you have really bad churn, is like 60 or 70%. And so this idea is like with a subscription, we can get somebody kind of like locked into this journey where they're buying more things. And obviously we're going to talk more about all the strategy that goes into that. But those are the two reasons why people like it. It's better revenue and it's kind of safer and more predictable for the business.
Okay. Would you say, so focusing specifically on kind of ecom brands here, would you say that any ecom brand can run a subscription platform, or is it certain sectors and product types, I guess?
I'd say if you want to like break down that subscriptions into two parts, where it's subscriptions are your typical, like say you're getting protein powder on a monthly subscription, right? That eliminates a lot of brands that aren't like that break down, right? Like clothing or other things. But we have a huge rise of an alternate subscription method, which is like memberships. It's like similar to like Amazon Prime, right? We have Inveterate, Subscribify that are doing these things in the Shopify space right now, where it's like, hey, pay $100 a year and you get all these perks or bonuses. And so that's also a subscription model in a sense because you're charging somebody, like you're billing them for that, but they're unlocking perks as opposed to just getting products. And if you have those two things, if you define it as both of those things, that's literally everybody in the space. But yes, for subscriptions like a physical, you're getting it shipped to you every month or quarter. It usually goes best with things that you use, consumables.
Okay, I want to kind of double tap on this. So obviously, kind of the consumable type business. I don't want to say common sense, but it's fairly obvious, like how you can build a subscription platform for what you mentioned there in terms of the alternative space. Can
Right.
you just give some examples of certain brands or subscription platforms or memberships that they can kind of offer?
Yeah, absolutely. So like just like high level, we're talking there's quite a few different things, right? So we've got your physical goods subscription, right? And so this is where you're using a platform like Recharge or Skio or Stay and you're selling something like pet food or protein powder or a sleep supplement and so it's something that's being shipped to somebody on a regular cadence. That's kind of like your classical physical goods subscription. The other side of this is like where there's a digital element, where there's an access element. So say you're doing something along the lines of I'm doing a monthly release of craft activities that you can download and print at your home to use, right? Or like a news membership or something like that. So that's going to be a digital membership, and is essentially like you're unlocking something that's an online or a digital product. And then yeah, I'd say like similar to the physical good one, a subscription type that's really really common are subscription boxes. So this is like the battle boxes of the world, and you can still use similar platforms like the Recharge and stuff that I mentioned, but it's where you're getting a monthly surprise and delight. Ipsy is really big on this. Birchbox, a lot of different like the really really big pet food brands are doing this as well. So you're getting like a monthly shipment with stuff in it. Sometimes it's curated by the end user, and sometimes it's curated by the company sending it to you.
Okay. Can we not talk about one of three, just focus on kind of the middle one and
Yeah.
maybe the membership angle as well for a second?
Mhm.
And just maybe answer the question of, if I'm a brand that's not in the kind of easy subscription area, how do I think through what I can include
Yeah.
in a subscription and how do I go about testing that?
That's a great question. So I think what's hard for brands sometimes is we're so concerned about. I think the mentality is how do I get people to come back, or even when we're talking normal subscriptions, this mentality of like how do I keep people from leaving? And I think if you actually start to shift your mindset a little bit to how do I give something to the customers that love me the most? So this idea of like most brands are being like a huge part of your revenue is being driven by say like 20, 10, maybe sometimes 30% of your customers, right? We've all seen that. You have a really, really active cohort. what can I do to make that cohort more profitable? And that's where memberships are absolutely crushing right now, because the idea is I'm going to give more stuff to people that already like my brand. So instead of points, maybe I'm giving them cash back. I'm giving them free shipping. I'm giving them access to early products. So there's a company out of New York called Milk Bar, right? And they actually do these curate, you can buy desserts. And they actually launched, they found that a lot of people really loved hearing about the different recipes that the founder and their head chef were developing. So they came up with a membership program where you paid to get access, and it was kind of like a wait list item, because they could only make so much of these new releases in a given month. So they had to limit it, so it was exclusive. And one of the benefits there is you already had tons of people that loved your brand and really wanted to know like what was coming next and could give input on what was coming next. So I'd say the mindset of just trying to get into the heads of your consumer about what they find valuable. Is it just getting more points on purchases? Is it having an input on what the next designs are going to be? Is it doing giveaways, or is it just unlocking more value with this with the membership, like free shipping and 10% off site wide and things like that? Anything you can do to incentivize people that buy from you to buy from you even more is a good way to think about it.
And let's say you've got, you're a business owner now, and you've got a few ideas of the subscription that you want to offer. Are you then kind of surveying these VIPs and kind of asking, if that's something they'd be interested in, or what do you recommend as a next step?
I think you should definitely do that. I think that people are already kind of telling you some of the, like, people might already be complaining about some of the problems, but any time a founder can spend time in the weeds talking to people about what they value, what they like. But it is also something to test, because the problem with surveying customers sometimes is that they'll tell you that this is what they want, but that's not actually what motivates them to purchase. It's what they think that they want. So that does happen a lot. So it's a question of like trying to, you have to set a baseline of like the lifetime value of your customers, right? And so when you start to break out your customer base into different segments, like again, if we're identifying the LTV or the lifetime value of our top 20% buyers, right? Is some of these actions that I'm taking improving LTV or not? Right? Because the common plays like loyalty, right? We're going to give away points. You get X number of points, which unlocks you a gift or some kind of purchase. And a lot of brands aren't even paying attention to whether that loyalty program is actually incentivizing people to spend more and driving up LTV. But if we're going to start testing a membership and we're going to start giving things away, you have to have some kind of baseline or some kind of metric that you're following to make sure that what you're doing is actually having a positive impact. Because if LTV goes down because you're now giving away 10% site wide to all these customers and they're not actually spending more, then that's not a good motivator, right? Then you have to start looking at what other things can I do to try to get people to spend more.
Okay, I do want to come back to kind of judging and tracking the success of the
Right.
subscription play, but my next question is on the nature of the beast. So obviously, subscription is typically known as a back end or retention play, but I believe I saw some content from you talking about how subscriptions can actually improve the front end or the kind of acquisition side of the business. Can you just talk
Absolutely.
through your kind of thought process around that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've just seen in the space, just across the board, this idea that people actually can be sold a better subscription experience upfront that is actually better for both you and for the brand. So just a really common example of this might be thinking about selling protein powder, right? So somebody's coming to your site, they're interested in protein powder. Can you give them a deal that is actually works really well in a subscription? And so what we've seen from a data standpoint is brands that typically offer really aggressive discounts to get somebody to subscribe, the type of person that usually buys that is just a value they're a discount seeker, right? So they're going to buy that protein powder. They probably don't have much affinity to your brand or the product, and then when they go shopping for more protein powder, they're going to do the same thing again, looking for discounts. Alternatively, you could offer a 3-month supply of protein powder at a discount with a special gift like one of your other products as an extra value add. So when you bake more value into the subscription, somebody's actually, and they spend more. We see these, we call them quarterly options, because it's essentially somebody, instead of buying a monthly subscription, they're buying a quarterly subscription. They're getting 3 times as much shipped every 3 months. Those groups spend more because the AOV for a 3-month purchase is higher. They retain better because when those 3-month subscribers renew, they renew at a higher percentage than monthly subscribers do. So you've now got something that's a higher AOV, it has a stronger retention, which means it has a stronger LTV across the board. And you're able to get better cash flow because you're getting more cash back into your business right now. So instead of waiting for a 3-month subscription to fire 3 times, a monthly subscription to fire 3 times, you're getting all that cash up front. And yes, you're discounting a little bit to make that possible. So that's one strategy. The other thing is just thinking about premium options, right? So like BattleBox is a great example of this. I mentioned them before. I've had John Roman on my podcast talking about this. When they first launched, they had like 4 different tiers, like your basic, like intermediate, advanced, and premium. And the theory was like, hey, maybe we'll just get a couple of people to get the premium option. But what they found is actually they had a lot of people that picked the premium option right away because it had more stuff. It seemed like a better value. There's just all this value packed into the premium one. So they're actually able to drive a higher average order value right away. And what we see in subscriptions a lot of times, as opposed to a lot of one-time purchases where any kind of friction point is viewed as like, a bad thing for checkout, with subscriptions, because it's a commitment, sometimes having more information or more options actually can improve conversion rates. And so that's kind of what I'm talking about, is when you think about the offer, what people are buying, what they get for subscribing. If you spend more time on that, it actually fixes a lot of retention problems down the road. Then it's less about trying to like fight the fact that you're losing 30 or 40% of your subscribers up front. Now you actually only have 20% of churn that month because a lot of people are in a quarterly plan, as an example.
And then, how do you recommend for businesses to launch their subscription program?
Yeah, I think that information gathering is like one of the most important and often underrated parts of launching a subscription program. And what I mean by that is like you should already be doing things on the site to collect information. So talking about pop-ups, whether you're doing that around email capture, or even say again, like if we're talking a protein powder company, if somebody comes to the site, are you asking them about their goals? Are they looking to build muscle? Is it are they trying to lose weight? Are they training for some kind of event? Right. So that's the start, and then the other part is that like post-purchase surveys, you're doing information gathering as well, and then you can do periodic surveys, and then you have cancellation reasons. And so I say all those things need to be in place because you want to start with something fairly simple. You don't want to get too fancy or complicated because that can be expensive to design and expensive to implement. It's like, even if I'm just selling protein powder, can I try testing a subscription where I'm now offering 10 to 20% off to see if people subscribe? I'm going to default to the subscription option, and I'm going to make it really clear that people are subscribed to that when they pick that. And then I'm going to test either with discounts or a gift with purchase or something else that's fairly simple and easy to give away from a value standpoint, to see if I can incentivize people to get on the subscription. And then all those other data points that I mentioned are really helpful for understanding what people are liking, what's happening, all those things. And then trying to iterate from there. So like when I mentioned Milk Bar, they didn't just come out and just say like, hey, we're going to launch this membership program. They were getting tons of feedback from people about what they liked and what they valued about the products and the company. And it just kept giving them ideas on what they should do. So that, again, you want to be able to launch simply and then continue to test and iterate from there, but you need to be able to gather information to make that work.
And then, when you are iterating and kind of optimizing things, I guess what are you comparing it against? Like, what kind of metrics are you looking at, and are you benchmarking against
Yeah.
industry peers, or what do you do there?
Yeah, you can definitely look at like what other brands in your space are doing if you're talking to them, although sometimes that's competitors. But realistically, every brand wants to know like how they're doing compared to other brands, but there are just so many variables that it's often a little bit of a fool's errand to try to compare what your take rates are on subscriptions. Instead, I would say like you want to be tracking a couple of simple things. The first thing is just looking at how many people opt into subscriptions versus one-time purchase. Just tracking that as a percentage, and then looking at running tests you can do to try to improve that to get people to pick the subscription more. That's one place to start. But the main point is going to be paying to contribution margin, or LTV. So essentially looking at some kind of time-bound series. Generally, this is like 90 days. Sometimes you can go as far as 180 days, but 90 days is 3 months. So that's generally a good kind of like limited amount of time to understand how subscribers are behaving and how profitable they are. So you want to look at the lifetime value, how much revenue you're getting from them, but also then looking at calculating your contribution margin per that cohort. Essentially, the cost to acquire them, less the cost to deliver them the product each time. And then you're taking that away from the revenue that you got from them to understand like how profitable is this cohort. So we set a baseline for that. So for example, let's say a lifetime value might be $120 over 3 months on average, right? And so we're looking at, can we boost that 120 to 125 or to 130? And so we're looking at cohorts, people we acquired in January compared to people we acquired in February, March, April, May, things like that. That's some of those basic ways to look at it. The other metric that a lot of people should be paying attention to is cancellation rate. What's the average number of people or percentage of people I'm losing each month? And can I positively influence that through offers inside the cancellation portal? Or again, I would argue that how you go back to how you're offering subscriptions in the first place are going to have a really, really strong impact on your churn numbers.
Okay. And are you looking at all of those metrics in conjunction together, or are you just saying kind of pick one or two and use that as your North Star?
Those are the three that I would be looking at all together because they tell a little bit of a different story. The other way to think about it is like subscription revenue there's really only three ways to influence subscription revenue. It's the number of subscribers you have, it's the average order value of your subscribers, and it's the average number of orders that happen on a subscription. And so anything I can do, I can either try to acquire more subscribers by running a discount campaign or some kind of other offer or special. So that's going to make my revenue go up. I could try to positively, like I can try to bump AOV with upsells or getting somebody on a quarterly subscription. That's going to positively impact revenue. And, or the third one might be I'm going to try to get people to be on an extra order more than what they are on average. So those are the three things, but you have to have basically paying attention to how many people opt in, how many people cancel, and ultimately like what your lifetime value is for that cohort is really the three metrics, the main metrics that you need to try to track success for your program.
Okay. And then every time you're making, iteration, are you letting it run for that, let's say 3-month period?
And not necessarily, like think for like really fundamental things, like if we're changing the flavor of the product or we're changing the formulation of the product, right? That's a really big one that we're going to want to let run. But no, I think like you can do upfront tests to see if we can improve our conversion rate, right? And so that can be like very quick feedback. We can also run tests on the back end for cancellation flow standpoint to see if we can improve like our retention metric at that level. But yes, a lot of the tests you're going to run are going to start to have different effects, but you don't necessarily have to run everything for 3 months because you also can look at LTV or your churn rate by month. So if I see like, hey, how does this, if I'm going to change the offer I do up front, right? Or if I'm going to launch a different email series when I onboard subscribers, we should see impact for that in month one. Right. So we should be able to see right away if that's having some kind of positive impact or not. But overall, we are looking at like a longer series with more orders to see if that can get people. Because I might be a little bit better up front, but if I can be a lot stronger at 3 months and 4 months, then maybe that's going to have a more profound impact than it would if I just improve retention upfront by a little bit.
I think that's super useful and helpful for people on the strategy side. Moving over to the technical piece now, what do you recommend in terms of a tech stack?
Yeah, there's a couple. Like, I think I'll come back to subscription platforms, but I will say like the tools that we're using outside of those almost universally right now. I actually just my newsletter just went out today before we record this is talking about Ollie Learn as a pop up. We really like them, using them. We love No Commerce for post purchase survey tools. We typically use Klaviyo with most of our clients. And then we use a tool called Zamo, which is a Klaviyo embed that integrates with most of the subscription platforms that allows you to do stronger upsells, one-click upsells, one-click portal management, all within the email. So we're seeing some massive campaigns work on that regard. SMS providers is kind of varies. But yeah, coming back to subscription apps or platforms, our current client base is primarily composed of Recharge, Skio, Stay AI, and then we have somebody on Loop. We've worked with people on Appstol and Smarter and some of these others. But I would say like those are probably the four leaders for what we like. And then depending on the use case, some of them are stronger than others. Recharge does really well with a lot of custom implementation. They have the best analytics in the space. They've got these incredible ability to upsell people to a subscription if they buy your product on one time in the cart or the checkout. So you don't need an extra plugin to try to figure that out. Skio does really well with bundle builders and building incentives. Stay AI's got a great portal. Loop is a little bit of all those things too. And I like their analytics as well. They're getting more fine tuned on those. I think like honestly for 80% of subscription businesses, you really can't go wrong with one of those. However, as you start to spend more time and get more focused with like the specific elements of your program, that's when it makes sense to like start paying attention to who does best what, who does what best. That makes more sense.
Yeah. Is the platform then kind of dependent on the nature of your product, or is it the nature of your subscription offering?
A little bit. I think like depending on like box subscriptions can be a little bit different, or like if you're doing a meal box where people are like building their own bundle kind of thing, that can have a maybe a different impact on what you're picking. But I think that there's like, I think it's important to understand that most subscription apps are really trying to enable good processing and then subscription management. So like if somebody needs to make a change or update their order or something like that, your subscription platform has to be really good at that. 'Cause for the most part, your subscription like revenue and health is actually based off of the offer that you build on Shopify, right? Or WooCommerce. Like, so it's your PDP and your landing page that's going to influence your subscription revenue the most. How you're building out your emails, how you're talking to people, how you're onboarding them, how you're offering unboxing experiences. So like I would say like a massive part of the subscription experience, your product has nothing to do with the subscription app itself. The subscription app needs to be viewed as an enabler and something that can like have little bits of different features or different touch points that allow you to improve the subscriber experience. So you should be thinking about them in that regard. What is it easier to do now because I have this tool? Like I mentioned, recharge is cross selling or upselling, like as you're part of the checkout process, right? That's really really powerful, But you can also get at that with some other plugins, right? If you need to, but that's kind of how you should be thinking about it. What feature, what experience is my subscription app helping me unlock? Because again, most of the work is going to be done by other parts in your business.
I want to touch on what you were saying about kind of using email, SMS, and other retention channels for the subscription play.
Right.
Where do they come in, and how should you be thinking about using retention channels to build your subscription program?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's realistically, just two really big touch points inside the subscription experience after you've purchased and before somebody cancels. So they bought from you, and we have the opportunity to onboard them to the subscription. So this is like a series of emails that you should be sending after somebody's purchased. That's explaining the product, educating the product. And a lot of times when I say education, brands reply to me, they're like, oh yeah, we can tell them how great and awesome we are. It's like, no, 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 no. I'm talking about educating, like addressing common problems, FAQs, right? Like making sure somebody has a really positive product experience, right? Is there anything particular about, like, say we're selling a supplement or a protein powder, and depending on what you mix it with affects the quality of the drink, right? So like very simply outlining like, hey, if you're doing it with milk, make sure it's cold and use this tool or something. If you're doing it with water, like add the powder in first and the water second. So being able to add a little bit of nuance there to make sure that people are having a really great product experience. You're also trying to demonstrate value. Like, are your products like different than the competitors? How do they work? Another massive opportunity in subscriptions is setting expectations, right? How long until I see benefits, right? Again, if I'm taking a weight loss drug or something, or weight loss supplement, how long until I'm going to feel different, until I'm going to notice difference? What do other people experience? So that's kind of like the first touch point. And you can use both email and SMS to ensure that somebody's getting onboarded and then they have a really good experience. The next piece is the upcoming billing reminder. So this is the idea of like, our order's about to process again. This is often the trickiest part of subscriptions, because a lot of brands don't want to send this because they're worried about, hey, they see this notification, they're just going to go cancel. You have the FCC and other states passing laws like saying that this has to happen. But the brands that are doing it really, really well are looking at it as an engagement opportunity. So we mentioned like that tool Zamo. So we're leveraging Zamo because we're trying to make it really, really simple. You don't need to leave the email. You don't need to go to the subscription portal if you just need to adjust your schedule a little bit, or if you want to try a different flavor or something like that. And we're making sure that in the billing reminder email, you're reminding people of that value. A brand that I really, really love is a pet food brand that I Heart Dogs, and they give away a portion of all their proceeds to feed shelter pets. And so kind of like the leading sentence in their billing reminder email is, hey, don't forget your upcoming order is going to feed like 7 dogs like for the next month, kind of thing, right? So they're reminding people of that right away, and not starting with, hey, your subscription's set to renew, do you want to cancel? And so that's why I think you just have to have a little bit different approach. But those are the two places. And yes, there are things like win backs. Yes, you can look at like converting one-time purchasers to subscribers, but within the subscription experience itself, those are the two places that people should be spending the most of their time. to make sure you're improving retention.
Okay. I want to just touch on what you said there, kind of the upsell opportunity using email to put people, let's say, they've bought, let's get them to subscribe. Is that important or not?
Oh, it's a total game changer. Like we have brands where we're upselling people from monthly to so that monthly to quarterly subscription on the product page I mentioned, we're doing that with an email as well. So we're seeing like in a given month with some of our brands where 1 to 1.5% of their entire monthly subscriber base is upgrading to quarterly. So this is an audience you already own, customers you already have, and now that suddenly they're 3x the value because they're taking that quarterly option instead of that monthly. So that's the first piece. The other thing too is just depending on the nature of your program, right? So like if you're selling something with a ton of different flavors or a ton of different scents or a ton of different styles, um, do people swap those a lot? Because if they swap a lot, you should be putting some of those swap options into that email so people can try something different, right? If people aren't swapping very much, right? They once they find their flavor, they stay on that flavor, then maybe you don't do that. You want to make sure that people are getting the option, hey, you found your flavor, so lock it in. Here's a 6-month offer to get you like all the flavor that you want over the next 6 months. So it is a little bit of like understanding like the type of program you have and what products are performing well and how your customers are behaving once they're on the subscription to kind of unlock that upsell. But it definitely should be looked at that because I think if you don't do that, then you're just looking at we're just trying to keep people from leaving. Like people are going to churn, but if we can still get the people that like us and that are staying to spend more with us, that's great. And then the final piece is there's always going to be like 10 or 20% of your subscriber base that's not quite right on the right frequency, meaning maybe I've got a little too much. Maybe I'm not using this as often as the recommended dose. And so if I can adjust my frequency a little bit so I'm using it at the cadence that I want, then I'm going to stick around for a really, really long time.
For sure. You mentioned the C word there, churn. What should brands be doing to think about? Maybe let's focus on the kind of pre-churn. How do we kind of minimize churn rates? What should they be doing?
Yeah, the first thing is really paying attention to product quality. Ultimately, when I look at and when I audit a brand and I see strong retention, I it's 99.9% of the times because they have a great product. They have a really good product, whether it's the taste, the flavor, the composition, how it's used, whatever it is that's a quality element of that product. So that's always going to be the first thing. So if you have really bad churn, like upfront, there's something off about your product and the people that are buying it. So you either have the wrong audience so that they don't value that as a quality, or there's something off with your product. So that's number one. So spending time, like a brand that we work with, they're changing their entire like formulation of their product because they know that they get feedback back about taste, right? So as soon as they fix that issue, like their churn is going to improve probably by 50 or even 100%. So that's the first thing. The second thing is then looking at like again product experience. What kind of offers or things can I give to people up front? Is it just I'm just discounting stuff? If I'm just discounting things, people are going to leave. Can I find other ways to bake in value? Right? Can I give them cash back? Can I put in rewards? Everyday Dose is kind of like a master of this in the sense of like they throw so many things at you when you purchase a subscription in the first place, and then there's gifts like every month. There's this whole like really massive subscription experience. And I would say you don't need to go that far, but you need to be thinking about what types of rewards or experience can I bake into this, right? Subscriptions shouldn't be something like you subscribe and then you're just hoping people stick around. You want to try to build in some type of experience where it makes sense for them to hear from you. You're going to make them offers. You're going to introduce them to other gifts or other products you have in your catalog. That's kind of how you want to be thinking about it. And then ultimately, like I think churn comes down to just understanding the reasons why people leave. If there are possible bad product experiences because they didn't know how to mix it, like I bought something a year ago. It was like vitamins in a powder, and I added it, I mixed it up, and it was super chunky when I drank it. It was horrible. And then as I'm going to throw it away, I'm looking on the package and it had mixing instructions on the package that I had missed. Right. And so like that happens all the time. So it's like, is that in the email? Is that a product insert? It's obviously on the package. But even in that instance, I'm a stupid consumer, right? I'm not reading the label. I have a bad experience. And guess who I'm blaming? I'm blaming the company I bought it from. So that ultimately is kind of like where you have to also be thinking about your messaging and communication. What dumb thing can I prevent somebody from doing so that they'll have a positive product experience?
Okay. And are there any kind of, I don't want to say hacks, but are there any kind of like tactics that you recommend implementing?
Yeah, I've mentioned a couple times, but testing that quarterly option on the product page, like we're seeing that convert incredibly well across the board with our clients where you position it like a 1 month, 3 month, 6 month, or a 1 month, 2 month, 3 month, right? And you're getting people, it's driving up average order value. You're having it's boosting LTV. So that's one thing that I think that everybody should be doing. I think almost every brand that we look at could spend more time on that onboarding or that communication standpoint. Um, as far as like hacks go, I think it really does come into like baking more of a subscriber experience into the product and setting expectations. So if you've got something that works really well right away, like dare people to prove you wrong. Okay. If it's something that takes a long time to see results, then use UGC or reviews from past customers to demonstrate that, hey, I took this for 3 months and it changed my life, right? Or I didn't really notice anything until month 4, but I can't tell you how much healthier I feel and happier I am, and I have my life back, right? So it's like you those are where the hacks are. It's kind of like speaking to that psychology of that and making sure people understand, hey, this is a journey we're taking you on. And if it is a journey, then okay, then maybe we need to look at selling it as a quarterly subscription or a 6 month subscription, because that's where people see the most value. And maybe not everybody takes it, but you're going to get some people that are willing to take that plunge with you, as opposed to somebody's just going to maybe just try the monthly option.
Okay. And post-churn, is there anything that you recommend brands implementing after someone has kind of cancelled their subscription?
Yeah, winbacks are really, really tricky because a lot of times people are gone for a reason. I think that there's definitely a lot of value in building in some kind of automation process, because somebody might just, maybe they did just have too much product, right? And so once they run out of that product, they're willing to come back. So you can look at churn reasons specifically. So like if we're looking at, I have too much product versus it's too expensive, maybe I'm building a campaign over too much product to, based on timing, bringing somebody back with a nice offer. If it's too expensive, maybe I'm going to give that group a more of an aggressive discount. The other thing would be like leveraging mailers like Postpilot or others where you can actually send something that's going to kind of cut through the email. Because the problem is once people cancel, they're often also going to unsubscribe from your email list, so it's difficult to kind of get them back. So it's kind of tricky, but that's what you can do with win back emails, mailers, and your ad strategy of people as they're like going shopping again, potentially seeing your ad again, or visiting your site again and getting retargeted. Those are kind of like the best things. But yeah, it's not, some brands it works really well, and it's often just because of the nature of the brand and the consumer. It's not like a tactic or a strategy that somebody isn't doing.
And how do you kind of get that feedback for why someone has left and implement it? Like, what do you recommend there?
Yeah, I recommend spending a lot of time inside the cancellation portal. So this is like looking at the app that you're using, subscription app you're using, building out an experience where you're, have a message from the founder that pops up. You're asking different questions about why people cancel. And a tactic that we like to do is we usually look at the top 3 reasons and we try to get more specific. So if somebody says like, hey, I have too much product, I like to maybe try to break that out to like, hey, I never started using the product, so that's why I have too much product, or I'm on the wrong schedule. Like I'm not using this as often as I thought I would, right? And so those are 2 different reasons to cancel. And so you could then bake in very specific treatments. If somebody's saying I'm canceling because I never started using the product, I'm going to offer them like, hey, like we're going to ask you to like skip your next order and give you another little like jolt in the arm to get you to try the product and start that habit that's going to change your life. If somebody doesn't have the right, like they have too much product because they're not using it as much, then I'm going to get them to adjust their frequency. Maybe they need to be every other month instead of every month. And so you can spend time collecting that data, um, looking at what's leading, what's not. And as you have leaders in those cancellation reasons, try to get a little bit more specific, pay attention to other, and then anything you can do to talk to consumers, right? Like, again, like sending emails from the founders, sending surveys periodically to try to check in to see what's working or not. You're not going to necessarily get like super high take rates on those, but you are going to get some feedback from people that are having good experiences or bad experiences. And that's where you're going to start to get those ideas. I do think it's a great idea, like a great exercise for any team is to take your marketing team, anybody that's working on product, and then anybody from your CX team and your founder or executives, and start whiteboarding listing out all of the things that you believe people like and all the things that you believe people don't like about your subscription program, and then see if there's really like honestly, when you do that, stuff just pops out on the page like, hey, we're not educating people on this piece, and that's actually a really fixable solution. And hey, we think people love this, but we're not doing anything to double down on it. So that's kind of like what you need to be doing as a team to get into the weeds.
And then kind of zooming out here, like obviously you've seen under the hood of, God knows how many subscription programs. How do you judge the winners from those that aren't so good or doing as well?
Yeah, I think honestly, it comes down to like believing in it as an overall experience. I think when you just have a subscription option, and so it's just repeat revenue for you, but it's not something you put a ton of focus or ton of time into, like those brands do okay, or not at all. I think when you look at brands that are building like an entire experience around it, where it's part of the product, it's how they're talking about the product. Say they're offering also a membership upsell where you unlock all these other perks or all these benefits. Those are the brands that are doing really, really well because they're starting to understand there's different levels of profitability from different cohorts of customers. And so when you understand that and you start to bake in different experiences for different customer segments, those are the brands that are crushing and unlocking really, really profitable subscribers.
And then I know you've thrown out a few names here. Could you just talk to maybe two or three subscription programs that you really like and that you think people should check out, and just why are they doing so well?
Yeah, absolutely. One that I talk about a lot, because I've used it myself, is called X Endurance. They're a supplement brand where they are trying to get you like they're helping endurance athletes. So whether you're doing CrossFit, I took them when I did a half Ironman 2 years ago. That's the reason I love them so much is kind of twofold. So the first thing is they believe in their product so much that they challenge you to test it right away. So when you get it, they'll tell you, "Hey, go do your big weekly workout without taking us, track what you do, start taking us, and then 7 days later, go do that workout again. And we guarantee that you will feel stronger and your endurance will be higher." So they're challenging you right out of the gate to start using that, which I know that not every brand can do that kind of challenge, but they make sure that you know that the product works right away. So again, whether you're selling a baked good or you're selling a sleep supplement, like anything you can do to demonstrate how it works right away can be really, really powerful. The second thing they do is they've built an entire membership experience on top of the subscription that's specifically just all about like rewarding people. So they unlock perks with other brands. They get you discounts to other things you might need for endurance. They literally launched an outdoor skincare brand because they have a lot of outdoor athletes. I'll be honest, like Jordan, I've never bought skincare online before, but I bought skincare from them because I knew that the product worked. I was like, all right, I'm going to try this. I think so. So that's one that I really, really love, and those are the reasons that I love it. I did mention BattleBox, but the reason I love BattleBox so much is they've built an entire content experience around their product. So they're not sending upcoming billing reminders, but they're sending unboxing videos. So when your box is like on the way, like it's been processed, it's been shipped, you get like a mission brief, right, for that month. And it's an unboxing video showing you everything that's going to be in your box, right? So they're hyping you up about what it is. So you get hype, but they also get this thing of where they're demonstrating value. Like if you opened a thing and I don't know what this is or what this does, right? Like which would be a bad product experience, they're showing you what it is and how to use it and why it's cool or different. And so those are some things I think that are really, really genius at how they leverage content and that experience. So those are two. I've talked about a couple other ones. I think anytime you can have a subscription that allows people to have the right control, where the person feels like they're in the driver's seat for what they're doing, is also another great option for doing that. And a lot of subscription programs do that, where there's a little bit of nuance to how you manage how often you're getting your product.
On the flip side now, and maybe we don't need to go into kind of specifics or give names, but when you're looking at subscription, what do you see that makes you kind of cringe or kind of pull away and you think they're doing it badly?
Yeah, the funny thing was I used to think longer commitment subscriptions were a bad thing because nobody would want to commit to a longer subscription, but I've been proven wrong on that. I will say my wife had a shampoo and conditioner subscription, a custom one that she had last year, and she really, really liked the product, but it was really, really difficult to adjust the schedule. She used her shampoo and conditioner at a different rate than they were shipping it to her. And then every time she went to go try to like add more time, it didn't work. And so she ultimately had to cancel because she's like, this is incredibly annoying. I have all this stuff, and this stuff can go bad over time, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to use all of it. So that's a really cringe thing for me. The other thing I too is just in general, when a subscription brand tells me they're worried about churn, instead of like, yes, you should be worried about churn, but do you know who's more profitable in your business? And what are you doing to unlock that profitability? That's where I think a lot of brands should be looking. And that's where I think the future is. The brands that are winning are the ones that are seeing opportunity, not just a host of problems with their retention program.
Okay, so it's communicating correctly with people sounds like one of the key
Right.
kind of pieces
Right.
that's missing.
Yeah. And as think about any, and as all as end users, as consumers, we hate when we're not notified, when we don't know what's going on. Like, it's difficult to keep loving something that treats you bad, right?
Yeah. Might be a slightly strange question, but do you believe that every brand should have a subscription?
No, I don't. Even for consumable companies, I love subscriptions, but I actually think that subscriptions are just a mechanism for unlocking like a repeat purchase behavior. So
Okay.
any, so I mean, I've talked to like mattress companies that want to do an annual sheet subscription, right? Like I've talked to like, you buy like a fridge, and you get the filters on subscriptions, right? Like there's all kinds of things that make sense on paper. And sometimes it's about educating people so that they get it, right? Because people sleep on their sheets, for example, like way too long without replacing them, and they get like disease ridden and ratty and all this stuff, or maybe you don't realize it, right? So a subscription you would think on paper makes sense, but it can be difficult to convince people they want that. Most people would rather just buy sheets when they need sheets, right? So I think it's really just about, if you think about it more like what is enabling the right repeat purchase frequency. Is that a subscription? Is that a membership? Is that a really, really great email marketing cadence? Um, Ultimately, that's how you should be thinking about it. Because if you're just trying to lock in repeat revenue, like it's going to be an uphill battle for you.
So subscription for the sake of subscription isn't always the right move.
Yeah. Whenever I hear a brand tell me that, or I hear like enterprise companies that are launching a subscription around some part of their business, it just makes me cringe a little bit because it just feels like a money grab, and it's not something that's like unlocking, like a subscription to seat warmers and like BMW from like a couple years ago or something like that. That just it just makes me cringe because that's just a bad customer experience. Like I bought the car, it has a seat warmer in it. Why am I paying extra for the seat warmer? Why is it not like I'm subscribing to get like BMW driving lessons? Like why isn't that the membership? That kind of thing.
Okay. I want to talk now about timing. And I guess my question is, when should brands kind of think about adding a subscription? And is it, from day one, is this something they should be thinking about?
I think that if you have a product that lends itself well to subscriptions, you should be thinking about the subscriber experience from day one. And the reason I say that is because you can actually start to build a better experience around this. So again, I'll use protein powder as an example because it's just really easy for everybody to understand and to relate to. If I have a protein powder that is really, really great in how it delivers like, protein to your system so you can build muscles better, right? I want to start thinking about how I could build a subscriber experience around that. Is it the fact that I'm going to start bundling that with pre-workout? Is it the fact that I'm going to start adding like training videos to people? Is it like I'm going to try to figure out the right scooping frequency? If you're taking 2 or 3 scoops a day, I'm going to give you a better discount on buying more. So if I'm starting to think about that from day one, then I'm going to be selling those things a little bit differently. And I'm going to start validating that as a premise. So conversely, if I find that I'm selling to people, or I want to sell like this really great meal replacement protein, right? Then I'm going to be more conscientious of the ingredients so that there's not like sugar in there, right? I'm going to use like other natural sugar replacements because people are looking for lower calories, for example. So like I'm trying to build that type of stuff from the product development into it, and then also in that offer. And so I think anytime you can think about whether, if you're wondering whether I should do a subscription, like why would somebody subscribe? And if the only answer is the discount, you're lacking something, right? Because that's, you have to have a stronger brand and a lot of traffic to make that work, right? Like if I'm selling 1,000 units a month and I just slap the subscription widget on my site, I'm maybe going to pick up 100 subscribers a month at a 10% take rate. But if I start thinking like, oh, I'm getting a lot of feedback that people are using our product to
Yeah.
train for a CrossFit competition. Oh man, I need to be adding in a free membership to CrossFit International anytime you subscribe, right? Like, so if you're thinking about that kind of a thought process or approach, you'll start unlocking like great subscriber experiences.
Where do loyalty programs or kind of memberships fit into this ecosystem? And
Yeah.
are they kind of part of this, or should they be thought of kind of separately?
Yeah, yes and no. Like, I think loyalty is like, I don't know. I have not great thoughts about loyalty because a lot of times brands have just slapped that on because it's what a competitor is doing or what somebody did 20 years ago. And I would always question if a loyalty program is actually causing people to spend more money, and or are you just giving away margin from people that would have bought from you anyway? Um, and so the other part of your question of like, if you're a subscription first brand, your loyalty should be baked into the subscription. And what I mean by is like, you're now seeing like, the recharges of the world that are adding these loyalty experiences into the subscriber experience. And almost all of them will do this element of like, hey, you can add a gift with purchase on the third month, or hey, we can give somebody an extra 10% off on month two, or and so if you're thinking about that as your loyalty program, now it's like, hey, you can be a one-time customer. There's not really much there other than the product, but subscribers get this like, journey of discounts and gifts and stuff. And that's where I think memberships can play in really, really well. When we've seen memberships, they can often be 3x the worth of, from an LTV standpoint, of your LTV of your subscribers even. And so you can kind of look at it as like, hey, we've got OTP, we've got subscribers, and then we've got subscribers and members. And so that's kind of what I want to think. Again, anytime you're thinking about how do I get somebody from ho hum here to spending more, like how can I get somebody into that higher level of value? That's where like loyalty and memberships should be used, is like as a lever to get somebody to take that next action or get more value from the brand. Otherwise, I feel like they can just be a waste of time and money.
Okay, so I am going to clip that point you made about loyalty programs often being a waste
Yeah.
of time, because I get asked that a lot, and a lot of people seem to want to do loyalty programs over subscription because they haven't thought this through.
Yeah, again, I think it's just that question of like finding out what people value the most. Because if I think like an easy thing is like, we were talking to a brand at Sub Summit on stage a couple years ago, Mixers, and they were saying that their top spending tier did not care about loyalty, cashback, anything like that, because they were like wealthy people that just bought a lot of their product. It was the second tier down that were rabid fans of the brand that wanted all of the points and the earn your next free purchase and stuff. But the question was, is they were already avid rabid fans. And so was loyalty, were they actually leaving money on the table by giving away too much stuff, or was the loyalty actually helping people get to that tier? And that's what makes loyalty hard, is trying to like measure that question.
And how would you help someone do that? So let's say they are kind of debating in their head a loyalty program or a kind of subscription program. What's the kind of process they should go through?
Yeah, I think anytime you can break things into cohorts or segment to test something, right? So something as simple as changing like what you're offering or what you're showing on the PDP or on a landing page, right? So like depending on how we're offering the subscription program. So one of the simplest ways would be like, hey, we're going to not talk about loyalty as much on this other stuff because people come to this product page first. We're going to start mentioning the fact that on their first renewal, we give them a free gift. So when you subscribe, you get 20% off. And then your first reorder, we send you another free gift. Right. So you're going to see right away if that converts better. So that's that first thing we were talking about earlier. So is that going to convert better? And then I'm going to see how that cohort renews. So we weren't offering that free gift last month. We are offering it this month. Do I see a big delta in retention? So that's a simple test, because if I start to see like it go up like enough points that offsets the cost of the free gift, then it's worth it. What sometimes might happen is like it goes up 2 percentage points, but I gave away a $5 product to like 1,000 people, and so it didn't have like a net benefit to my company. The other part with like loyalty is like, okay, maybe we want to try turning off some of those loyalty experiences, or we're not automatically enrolling some people in loyalty to see if that cohort, what is the repurchase rate, the average days to making a second purchase or a third purchase. So there's a lot of different ways to track how that's happening. You just have to start like narrowing down the segments that you're going after and then deciding on what you want to test within that segment, either taking something away or adding something in.
Okay. Do you have any recommended tools or software for doing that kind of cohort analysis and kind of some of those calculations?
Yeah, analytics is really tricky because we're always questioning whether it's accurate or not, whether it works as a source of truth. Your subscription app, I think I will say this: if you take everything with a grain of salt on how accurate it is, you're not going to be like super frustrated when you feel like it's off a little bit, but you do need to pick some place to be your source of truth so that you, if you do make changes, you can actually, even if it's off 5%, it's often 5% the same way every time, if that makes sense. So your subscription app is going to have analytics there. That's one place to do it. Then we use other tools like Lifetimely. We use Sarah's Analytics. We've used Peel, Dacity. There's a lot of different analytics tools out there. So it's really just a question of, if you're not using one, if you don't have like a third party source of truth, even if it's like Triple Whale or something like that, um, and you're doing 5 million or more in revenue, then you need to start looking at a place that's giving you the reports that you want. And every brand has a little bit of a different nuance, like whether they want to see profitability by cohort, whether they can track by discount code is another really common one. And just making sure that you're getting that feedback you want. Um, the thing that I've done a lot too lately is I'll literally download subscriber cohorts out of the subscription app and I'll upload them to ChatGPT and I'll give it prompts to go through and analyze the cohorts. So like there's a lot of options and tools there. It's just a question of like, you need to build a system so that you're doing the same thing each time. Because if you're looking in Shopify 1 month and then looking in Recharge the next month and then using ChatGPT the third month, you're going to get varying answers between the three of them anyway.
Okay. So it's just one source of truth and then apples to apples
Right.
comparisons.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Final question then is, if someone is a let's say mid seven figure brand, they're doing 200 300K in monthly revenue, they have only ever not used a subscription before, let's say, and they've been selling kind of products one time. They've got a couple of ideas of subscriptions to test. What do you recommend they do next? Is it put up a product page or an offer page and kind of run 5% of new traffic to keep testing? What's the process next?
Yeah, I think I would always I always like to ask or assess like a question of like around risk, right? So for example, if we got everybody to take the subscription offer, what does that do to the business, right? Is like, are we still profitable, right? Conversely, is there a risk where this offer might tank our conversions? And so those are the two ends of that spectrum. And so if you're going to screw with a lot of stuff that might risk your conversions, then yes, you want to either use a landing page, you want to use a landing page and divert a certain percentage of your traffic to it. If it's more like, hey, we're just going to update the product page that people buy from, and there's now going to be a subscription option on, we can run that around a limited time frame to see how it converts or not, and how it affects like the average revenue per site visitor to see if it has a positive impact or not. Because generally, what happens is you might see conversions go down a little bit, but you have now subscribers that are buying from you, and the LTV of those subscribers are going to be higher. So that's going to have a net benefit. A lot of times, if done right, you can actually improve the overall conversions on the page. So I would say the thing is just to start thinking about what are the levels of tests I want to run. And this is maybe the harder part to try to like think through. It's not just I want to launch a subscription. It's what are the 3 or 4 things I'm going to start testing once I launch the subscription if things go against me, right? Am I going to try in a more aggressive discount? Am I going to try a gift with purchase? Am I going to try like this quarterly option where people can buy, a bulk option, buy 3 month supply? So I would think about that. And then also like you can start testing that with email marketing really easily as well. So you could actually launch a subscription, either a landing page, or even just a subscription option where you're emailing past customers and seeing if you can get them to opt in. That's another way to mitigate risk. Um, But there's a lot of work that goes into that, or that can go into that. So sometimes it's really about finding the simplest path to test this idea or this thesis of, do I have a subscription offer that is going to be compelling for my customers?
Okay. I think that's a great place to end. Matthew, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. Insane amount of value dropped. What type of brands do you kind of typically work with, and where can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So we work with a lot of brands that are growing really aggressively, that are just kind of like crushing their acquisition side, but they're doing it with subscription products and are feeling a little naked on the subscription strategy and execution side. So we work with brands in a couple of different ways, whether we're running an audit to try to assess where they're at and where they should be going. We have retainer clients that are having us work on the subscription piece, right? We're running tests on acquisition, we're running tests on retention, or we have some brands that are like, hey, we just need help standing up some fundamentals, or we just want an advisor inside the program. So you can reach out to me. We have on our website, it's thesubscriptiondoc.com. You can learn a little bit more about our process, our practice. We have tons of free resources there as well, in addition to the newsletter and the podcast. Or you can look for me on LinkedIn or Twitter, Matthew Holman, Subscription Doc.
Okay. And are there certain kind of revenue or sector kind of minimums that people should be in?
Not necessarily. Like, we have brands that are under 1 million that are like really interested in getting subscriptions right, and we have like a 3 month sprint that we'll run with those brands to make sure they're the tech is getting implemented, the designs are stood up, the emails are built out, all that stuff. Um, Generally speaking, like, our retainer clients are typically doing like 20 million or more, because it makes sense to have like to pay for a specialized consultancy on that part of their business. But we help everybody in between. It's just a question of how long we're working with them and how long it takes to see like results. Because again, the fact, like anything, like the more traffic you have, the more sales you have, the easier it is to test things and to see improvements, and see a lot more profitability come through. But even if you're not at that rate, it's often just a lot of brands that we work with just want somebody there that they know knows what they're doing.
Okay. Matthew, thank you so much again for coming on the pod.
You're welcome, Jordan. Great questions. Great discussion, man. Thank you.
Scaling an ecom brand is hard. That's why we're on a mission to share as much info as we can to help make it easy. From weekly interviews with the biggest names in the space, to case studies, brand breakdowns, and tips and tricks, and much, much more. Subscribe so you don't miss out.